The Black Hawk's rotors kicked up a blinding sandstorm as it descended toward forward operating base Havoc. Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves gripped her rifle tighter, watching the desolate Afghan landscape disappear into a brown haze. 4 years of infantry training, 2 previous deployments, airborne school, and nearly completing ranger school. None of it mattered the moment her boots hit the ground. She was about to become the first woman integrated into Alpha Company, 2nd Battalion, 75th Infantry Regiment. And nobody wanted her here. The crew chief gave her the signal. Maya grabbed her ruck, 70 pounds of gear that would be her life for the next 9 months, and jumped down onto the landing zone. The heat hit her like a physical force, 110 degrees even at 800 hours. Through the settling dust, she could see them, a formation of soldiers watching her arrival with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Captain Derek Holloway approached, his handshake perfunctory and limp. He was mid-30s with a weathered face that spoke of multiple combat tour and eyes that held zero warmth. Staff Sergeant Reeves, welcome to FOB Havoc. His tone suggested it was anything but a welcome. You're the experiment. Maya met his gaze without flinching. I'm a soldier, sir, same as any other. We'll see about that. He gestured to a staff sergeant standing nearby, a mountain of a man with arms like tree trunks and an expression that could curdle milk. This is Staff Sergeant Kyle Braddock, 15 years infantry. He'll show you around. Braddock looked her up and down like she was an insect he'd found in his coffee. Ma'am. The word dripped with sarcasm. She was enlisted, same rank as him, no ma'am required. He was making a point. Staff Sergeant, Maya replied evenly, refusing to take the bait. As the Black Hawk lifted off behind her, Maya followed Braddock through the base. FOB Havoc was relatively small, maybe 300 personnel, surrounded by HESCO barriers and guard towers. Helmand Province stretched beyond the walls, a landscape that had chewed up empires for centuries. The Taliban owned the territory outside the wire. Everyone knew it. Soldiers stopped what they were doing to watch her pass. The whispers started immediately. That's her, she's tiny. Diversity higher. Political correctness is gonna get people killed. Give her a week, she'll be crying for a transfer. Maya kept her eyes forward, her jaw set. She'd heard it all before, at West Point when she'd fought to join the infantry track, at airborne school when instructors assumed she'd quit, at ranger school where she'd been one of the first women to attempt the course. She'd made it to the final phase before a hip injury forced her out. Still, she'd proven she could handle it. But proving it once was never enough. She had to prove it every single day to every single person who doubted her. Braddock led her to a small plywood structure separated from the main barracks. Female quarters, he announced. You'll be alone. We don't have any other. He paused deliberately. Women in combat roles here. Maya dropped her ruck inside. The space was bare. A cot, a locker, a single light bulb, no roommate, no battle buddy, isolated by design. Formation at 1800 for briefing, Braddock said. Try not to get lost. He walked away and she heard him mutter to another soldier, 2 weeks max, she'll be begging out. Maya sat on the cot and allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of doubt. 30 seconds to feel the weight of being alone, of being unwanted, of carrying the burden of representing every woman who'd ever wanted to serve in combat. 30 seconds to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, this was a mistake. Then she stood up, unpacked her gear with military precision, and began field stripping her M4 carbine. The familiar ritual calmed her. This weapon didn't care about her gender. It would fire true if she maintained it properly, if she aimed correctly, if she controlled her breathing and squeezed the trigger with steady pressure. In combat, the rifle was the great equalizer. At 1800, she reported to the briefing tent. Every seat was taken except one in the very back. As she sat down, the soldier next to her, Corporal Jensen, according to his name tape, physically shifted his chair away from her. The message was clear. Captain Holloway stood at the front, pointing to a map of the local area. Intelligence indicates increased Taliban activity in the Sangin Valley. We're running convoy operations starting tomorrow, supply run to FOB Edinburgh. His eyes found Maya. Staff Sergeant Reeves will be assigned to the third vehicle. Jensen, you'll brief her on protocols. Jensen's jaw tightened, but he nodded. As the briefing continued, Maya noticed one soldier who wasn't looking at her with contempt. Private First Class Omar Santos, a young medic with kind eyes, simply nodded in her direction, a gesture of acknowledgement, maybe even respect. It was the smallest thing, but in that moment, it felt like everything. After the briefing, Maya overheard Holloway talking to his second-in-command outside the tent. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices carried. "Sir, with respect, she's a liability. The men don't trust her." "I don't like it either," Holloway replied, "but orders are orders. We'll give her the Sangin run. If she can't hack it, and she won't, I'll have grounds to request her transfer. Problem solves itself." Maya stood in the shadows, her fists clenched. They wanted her to fail, expected it, were planning on it. She returned to her empty quarters, sat on her cot, and made a promise to herself. She wouldn't just survive here. She wouldn't just prove them wrong. She would become the best soldier in this entire company. Whatever it took. The convoy rolled out at 5:30, 6 Humvees loaded with supplies and ammunition destined for FOB Edinburgh, 40 clicks north through some of the most hostile territory in Helmand Province. Maya sat in the third vehicle, positioned between Corporal Jensen and a private who'd introduced himself only with a grunt. The pre-dawn darkness offered little comfort. Everyone knew the Taliban preferred to attack at first light when the sun would be in the soldiers' eyes. Jensen handed her a radio headset without looking at her. "Stay on Channel 3. Don't clog up the comms with unnecessary chatter." "Roger that," Maya replied, adjusting the headset and checking her M4 for the third time. 30 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber, safety on. Her plate carrier held 6 additional magazines, 210 rounds total. She hoped it would be enough. She feared it wouldn't matter. The convoy moved slowly through the outskirts of Sangin, a town that had seen more combat than most places on Earth. Mud brick compounds lined the road, their walls scarred with bullet holes from firefights past. Local nationals were already stirring, old men leading donkeys, children watching the American vehicles with expressions that could mean anything. The intelligence briefing had been clear. The Taliban had spotters everywhere. Maya scanned the rooftops, the alleyways, the road ahead. Something felt wrong. The hair on the back of her neck stood up, that primitive instinct that had kept soldiers alive since the first human picked up a weapon. "Lead vehicle, this is 3, she said into her radio. "The locals are clearing out, streets are emptying." Static, then Jensen's irritated voice cut in. "Reeves, keep the channel clear." "But—" The explosion cut her off. The lead Humvee vanished in a ball of orange flame and black smoke, the IED's force flipping the 5-ton vehicle onto its side like a child's toy. The shockwave hit Maya's vehicle a split second later, rattling her teeth. Then the world became chaos. Machine gun fire erupted from both ridgelines, rounds hammering into the convoy from multiple directions. The distinctive crack of AK-47s mixed with the deeper thump of a PKM machine gun. Windshields shattered. Metal sparked as bullets found their marks. "Contact left, contact right, we're surrounded," someone screamed over the radio. "Dismount, dismount. Return fire." That was Holloway's voice from the second vehicle, trying to impose order on pandemonium. Maya's training took over, that muscle memory drilled into her through countless hours at the range, in shoot houses, in realistic combat simulations. Her mind became crystal clear even as her body moved on autopilot. She kicked open the Humvee door and rolled out, dropping into a combat crouch beside the vehicle's wheel well. Bullets snapped through the air above her head, that distinctive crack that meant they were close, too close. She could see muzzle flashes from the northwest ridge, maybe 200 meters out. The PKM machine gun was there, its sustained fire keeping the entire convoy pinned down. Men were trapped behind their vehicles, unable to maneuver, unable to help the soldiers in the burning lead Humvee. "Gun position northwest ridge," Maya shouted into her radio. "Grid." "We see it," Jensen yelled back. "Someone get suppressive fire on that position." But no one moved. The Taliban had positioned themselves perfectly, interlocking fields of fire that covered every approach. The Americans were caught in a kill zone, and the machine gun was the key. If it wasn't eliminated, they'd be picked off one by one. Maya made a decision that would either save lives or end hers. She broke from cover. "Reeves, what the hell are you doing?" Jensen's voice in her ear, but she'd already committed. She sprinted 15 meters to a large boulder, rounds kicking up dirt at her heels. Her heart hammered, but her breathing stayed controlled, in through the nose, out through the mouth, just like training. She could hear the instructors' voices. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. She dropped behind the boulder, brought her M4 up, and acquired the target. The PKM gunner was partially concealed behind a stone wall, but she could see his silhouette, see the muzzle flash. 200 meters, wind negligible, slight uphill angle. The fundamentals came automatically. Proper stance, sight alignment, sight picture, respiratory pause, trigger squeeze. Her first shot missed high, adrenaline. She adjusted, controlled her breathing, found that space between heartbeats. Second shot, the gunner flinched but kept firing. Third shot, center mass. The PKM went silent. The gunner slumped forward over his weapon. "Target down," Maya's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Machine gun is down." The effect was immediate. Without the machine gun's suppressive fire, the American soldiers could maneuver. They poured out from behind their vehicles, returning fire with disciplined aggression. The volume of outgoing rounds tripled in seconds. Maya didn't stop. She'd spotted 2 more Taliban fighters in a ditch to the east, trying to flank the convoy. She shifted position, acquired the first target, a man with an RPG launcher. He was setting up the shot that would destroy another vehicle. She fired twice, he dropped. The second fighter turned, saw his comrade fall, raised his AK-47 in her direction. Maya was faster, always faster. 3 rounds center mass. He crumpled. The firefight raged for another 8 minutes, but the Taliban's coordination was broken. Without the machine gun and with their flanking element eliminated, they began to withdraw, dragging their wounded with them. The Americans maintained fire superiority, their training and discipline overcoming the ambush's initial advantage. When the last shot echoed away and silence finally fell over the Sangin Valley, Maya stayed behind her boulder, weapon up, scanning for threats. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was normal. The adrenaline would hit later, but right now she was still in combat mode. "Cease fire, cease fire," Holloway's voice on the radio. "Get me a casualty report, medic to the lead vehicle." Maya finally lowered her weapon and moved back toward the convoy. The lead Humvee was a burning wreck, but she could see soldiers moving, pulling their wounded comrades clear. Santos was already there, working on an unconscious soldier. As she approached her vehicle, Jensen stared at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Shock maybe, or disbelief. He started, then stopped. "Those kills, that was you." Before Maya could answer, Captain Holloway appeared, his face smudged with smoke and dust. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a long moment he said nothing. Then he keyed his radio. "All units sitrep. We have 3 wounded, none critical, 8 enemy KIA confirmed." He paused, still looking at Maya. 3 enemy kills credited to Staff Sergeant Reeves. She neutralized the machine gun position and prevented the flank. The radio crackled with responses, but Maya barely heard them. She could feel eyes on her now, different than before. Not contempt, not dismissal. Something else entirely. Holloway stepped closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "That was solid work, Staff Sergeant." He didn't smile, didn't apologize for doubting her, but something in his tone had changed. "Mount up. We still have a mission to complete." As Maya climbed back into the Humvee, Jensen slid over to make more room for her. It was a small gesture, maybe unconscious, but it spoke volumes. The convoy limped toward FOB Edinburgh, one vehicle destroyed, 3 soldiers wounded but alive. All alive. And Maya Reeves had 3 confirmed kills in her first combat engagement. It was only the beginning. The days after the Sangin ambush brought a subtle shift in the atmosphere at FOB Havoc. Not acceptance, not yet, but a cautious reassessment. Maya noticed it in small things. Soldiers who'd previously ignored her now nodded when she passed. Jensen started including her in the vehicle maintenance checks without being ordered to. Even the mess hall conversations didn't immediately die when she sat down, though Braddock's table still went silent, their resentment hardening rather than softening. Captain Holloway seemed to be watching her differently too, evaluating, measuring. She'd proven she could fight, but one firefight didn't make a soldier. The question hanging in the air was whether the Sangin ambush had been skill or luck. In the infantry, consistency was everything. She'd get her chance to answer that question sooner than expected. The intelligence came in on a Tuesday evening. A suspected Taliban safe house in a village 8 clicks west of the FOB. The compound reportedly housed a mid-level commander and a weapons cache. The mission brief was straightforward: nighttime raid, quick in and out, capture or kill the commander, secure any intelligence or weapons. Holloway assembled his team in the operations center. Jensen, Braddock, Martinez, Santos, Williams. He paused, his eyes finding Maya in the back of the room. And Reeves. Full kit NVGs, we roll at 200. This is a joint op with local forces, but we're taking point on the breach. Braddock's face darkened. Sir, with respect, a raid requires complete unit cohesion. We can't afford. I didn't ask for your opinion, Staff Sergeant. Holloway cut him off coldly. Reeves performed well under fire. She's earned a slot on this operation. Unless you're suggesting your men can't maintain cohesion. It was a challenge, and Braddock knew it. No, sir, Braddock replied through clenched teeth. At 200 hours, the team loaded into 2 vehicles and drove into the darkness. Maya sat across from Santos, who was doing his pre-mission ritual, touching the photograph he kept in his helmet, a picture of his daughter back in Texas. He caught her watching and gave a small smile. First raid, he asked quietly. Third, Maya replied, but first as an assaulter. Previous 2 I was pulling security. Santos nodded. Stay behind Jensen on the breach. He's done this 100 times, and keep your sectors tight, don't get tunnel vision. It was simple advice, the kind a veteran gives to anyone going into danger, regardless of gender. Maya appreciated it more than he could know. They dismounted 400 meters from the target and approached on foot, night vision turning the world into shades of green. The compound was a typical Afghan structure, high mud walls surrounding a central courtyard with 2 buildings. Intel suggested 4 to 6 enemy combatants inside. Holloway gave the hand signals. Maya stacked up on the door behind Jensen, her heart rate elevated but controlled. She could hear her own breathing inside her helmet, feel the weight of her rifle, smell the dust and cordite that seemed to permeate everything in Afghanistan. The breacher set the charge, 3 seconds, 2, 1. The explosion blew the door inward and Jensen was through instantly, Maya right behind him. Moving left, she called out, peeling off to clear her sector while Jensen went right. The room was empty, sleeping mats, a cold teapot, an AK-47 leaning against the wall. Clear left. Clear right. They moved deeper into the building, each room a potential death trap. Third room, Maya pushed through the doorway and found 2 Taliban fighters scrambling for weapons. Her training took over with mechanical precision. The first fighter was reaching for an AK. She fired 3 rounds center mass. He went down hard. The second fighter, younger, maybe 19, grabbed a pistol from a table. She engaged before he could raise it. 2 rounds, both hits. He collapsed beside his weapon. 2 enemy down, she called out, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. She moved to clear the corners, ensuring no one else was hiding. The room was secure. In the adjacent building, she could hear sustained gunfire. Braddock's team had made contact, but her building needed to be fully cleared. She and Jensen moved upstairs, methodical and precise, covering each other's movements with practiced efficiency. The second floor had 3 rooms. The first 2 were empty. The third contained what they'd come for, a makeshift command center, maps on the walls showing coalition patrol routes, a laptop, stacks of documents, and in the corner a cache of weapons, rifles, ammunition, RPGs, and what looked like components for IEDs. Jackpot, Jensen breathed. Call it in. Maya keyed her radio. Building 1 secure. 2 EKIA, intelligence and weapons cache located 2nd floor. Copy, Holloway responded. Building 2 secure, 1 EKIA, commander captured. Santos, get up there and help Reeves secure that intel. As the firefight died down and the compound was fully secured, Santos arrived with evidence bags and a camera. He photographed everything while Maya began carefully sorting through the documents. Most were in Pashto, handwritten notes, typed reports, sketches of what appeared to be attack plans. Can you read any of this? Santos asked. Maya picked up a document, her eyes scanning the flowing script. 2 deployments in Kandahar province had taught her more than just how to fight. She'd spent months working with interpreters, taking language classes during downtime, understanding that intelligence was often more valuable than bullets. This one, she said, pointing to a detailed sketch, shows FOB Lexington. These notes describe the guard rotation, weak points in the perimeter. She flipped to another page, her expression hardening. They're planning an attack, coordinated assault, multiple suicide bombers, 3 days from now. Santos's eyes widened. Holy shit, we need to get this to S2 immediately. Within minutes, the intelligence was being photographed and transmitted back to headquarters. Maya continued translating, providing context and details that the documents alone couldn't convey. The attack plan was sophisticated. Whoever had written it understood coalition tactics and had been surveilling FOB Lexington for weeks. When they finally extracted from the compound at 4:30, the mission was being hailed as a significant success. 1 high-value target captured, substantial weapons cache seized, and most importantly, intelligence that would save lives. Back at FOB Havoc, as dawn broke over the desert, Holloway debriefed the team. Outstanding work across the board. The intel from this raid potentially saved dozens of coalition and Afghan lives. He looked directly at Maya. Staff Sergeant Reeves, your language skills and combat performance were critical to this mission's success. Well done. In the mess hall later that morning, Maya sat down with her breakfast tray, powdered eggs and something that claimed to be bacon. For the first time since arriving at FOB Havoc, someone sat down next to her without hesitation. It was Martinez, a sergeant who'd been with the unit for 2 years. Heard you can read Pashto, he said, stabbing at his eggs. That's damn useful. Why didn't you mention it before? Maya shrugged. Nobody asked. Martinez laughed, a genuine sound. Fair enough. Listen, some of us are running a vehicle maintenance training this afternoon. Jensen suggested you might want to sit in, learn some of the quirks of our specific Humvees. Interested? It was an olive branch, an invitation into the tribe. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Yeah, I'm interested, thanks. As Martinez walked away, Santos slid into the seat across from her. He looked exhausted. He'd been up all night treating a local child with appendicitis, but he was smiling. You're making friends, he observed. Baby steps, Maya replied. That's how it works. You earn respect 1 mission at a time, 1 skill at a time. Most of these guys are good soldiers. They just needed to see you as a soldier first, not as a political statement. Maya nodded, but she knew the truth was more complicated. Across the mess hall, Braddock sat with 3 other soldiers, their conversation hushed but their occasional glances in her direction making it clear she was the topic. His faction hadn't softened. If anything, her success seemed to make them more resentful. Later that afternoon, Maya was in the motor pool helping Martinez replace a transmission filter when Braddock appeared. He watched for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Reeves," he said finally, "a word." Maya wiped her hands on a rag and followed him to a quiet corner of the motor pool, away from the others. She knew what was coming. She'd dealt with men like Braddock her entire career. "You think you've proved something," he said, his voice low and hard. "One ambush, one raid, suddenly you're infantry material. But I've got 15 years in this man's army, and I know the difference between skill and luck. You got lucky." Maya met his gaze without flinching. 3 confirmed kills in Sangin, 2 more in the raid. Intel that saved lives. If that's luck, I'll take it. "Luck runs out," Braddock continued. "And when it does, when you freeze up or make a mistake that gets one of my soldiers killed, I'll make sure everyone knows this diversity experiment was a failure from the start." Maya stepped closer, her voice dropping to match his intensity. "I'm not an experiment, Staff Sergeant. I'm a soldier who's done the same training, passed the same standards, and put rounds on target when it mattered. If you want to hate me for being a woman, that's your problem. But don't you dare suggest I'm a threat to these soldiers. I've already saved lives in this unit, including probably yours when I took out that PKM gunner." Braddock's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Maya could see the calculation in his eyes. He couldn't argue with results, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "This conversation isn't over," he finally said. "Yes, it is," Maya replied calmly. "Unless you want to take this to Captain Holloway and explain why you're more concerned with my gender than my performance." She walked away, her hands trembling slightly with suppressed adrenaline. She'd made an enemy, but she'd also drawn a line in the sand. Braddock would either have to accept her competence or reveal his prejudice for what it was. That night, cleaning her rifle in the solitary female barracks, Maya reflected on how far she'd come in just 2 weeks. 5 confirmed enemy kills, critical intelligence gathered, slowly earning the respect of soldiers who'd written her off. But Braddock's words echoed in her mind. Luck runs out. She knew he was right about one thing. She'd need to keep proving herself, again and again, because the margin for error was razor-thin. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and all the ground she'd gained would evaporate. Maya finished reassembling her M4, the familiar click of metal on metal oddly comforting. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. She was ready. The mission brief seemed routine: provide security for a village elder meeting in Jarry, a small settlement on the edge of Taliban-controlled territory. Coalition forces were attempting to establish local governance, encouraging elders to reject Taliban influence in exchange for development projects and security guarantees. Maya had seen these meetings before on her previous deployments. They were political theater, everyone playing their roles, sometimes productive, often futile. But something about this one felt wrong from the moment the convoy entered the village. It was too quiet. The normal rhythms of Afghan village life were absent. No children playing in the dusty streets, no women carrying water, no merchants hawking goods. The few men visible watched the American vehicles with expressions Maya couldn't read. Was it fear? Anticipation? Hostility? "Sir," Maya spoke into her radio as their vehicle rolled past a row of mud brick compounds. "The village feels off. Very few civilians visible, and those that are seem nervous." Captain Holloway's voice crackled back. "Noted, Reeves, stay alert." From the turret, Braddock's voice cut in with barely concealed irritation. "It's midday heat. People are inside. Stop seeing ghosts, Reeves." Maya bit back her response and continued scanning. The convoy parked in the village center, a dusty square dominated by a large compound where the meeting would take place. The soldiers established a security perimeter, Braddock's team on the north side, Jensen's team to the south, Maya assigned to the east with Martinez and 2 others. As the village elders arrived and the coalition officers began their presentation about irrigation projects and school construction, Maya couldn't shake the crawling sensation between her shoulder blades. She'd learned to trust that feeling. It had kept her alive more than once. Then she saw him, a shepherd on a hillside about 400 meters out, supposedly tending goats. But he wasn't watching his animals. He was watching the compound, and his hand kept moving to his pocket, pulling something out, looking at it, then putting it back. A phone, he had a phone. "Contact," Maya said quietly into her radio. "Possible spotter on the eastern ridge. Shepherd with a phone, he's watching us." "I don't see any," Martinez started. 400 meters, 11 o'clock from our position. Tan vest, black turban. Martinez swung his optic toward the ridge. "Got him. Yeah, that's not normal behavior." Before they could report it further, the shepherd raised his phone to his face. Maya's blood turned to ice. "Signal," she screamed into her radio. "He just signaled incoming." The RPG streaked from a rooftop to the north, its smoke trail cutting through the afternoon sky. It impacted against the compound wall with a deafening explosion, showering the square with debris. Then the world erupted. Machine gun fire poured from multiple positions, rooftops, alleyways, windows. The Taliban had turned the village into a killing field, with interlocking fields of fire covering every approach. The Americans were surrounded, caught in the open with minimal cover. "Ambush, ambush." Holloway's voice fought through the chaos of gunfire and screaming. "All elements fall back to the compound. Get inside." But falling back meant crossing open ground under fire. Already 2 soldiers were down, Santos scrambling toward them while rounds kicked up dirt around his feet. The Taliban had planned this perfectly. The meeting was bait, and the Americans had walked right into the trap. Maya's team sprinted for the compound entrance, bullets snapping past them. Martinez went down hard, clutching his leg. Maya grabbed his vest and dragged him the last 10 meters to cover, her muscles screaming with the effort. I'm good," Martinez gasped. "Through and through, missed the bone." Inside the compound courtyard, the situation was desperate. Approximately 20 soldiers pinned down, Taliban fighters in elevated positions on all sides, and limited ammunition. The radio crackled with frantic calls for air support, but the closest Apache were 15 minutes out. 15 minutes might as well be 15 hours. Maya assessed the tactical situation with the clarity that came from training and adrenaline. The Taliban's advantage was their elevated positions. The key was a 2-story building on the east side. From the 2nd floor, she could see multiple enemy firing positions and potentially provide overwatch for the pinned soldiers. "I'm moving to that building," she told Holloway, pointing. "2nd floor, I can get eyes on their positions." Holloway looked at the building, calculating. "That's 30 meters of open ground. They'll cut you down." "They'll cut all of us down if we stay pinned here," Maya countered. "I can make it, and I can make a difference from up there." For a heartbeat, Holloway hesitated. Then he nodded. "Go, Jensen, give her covering fire." Maya didn't think. Thinking got you killed. She burst from cover and ran, her legs pumping, her rifle held tight against her chest. Jensen's M249 roared behind her, pouring suppressive fire toward the enemy positions. Rounds cracked past her head. 1, 2, 3. Something tugged at her sleeve. She didn't slow down. She hit the building's entrance at full speed, crashed through the door, and immediately started clearing rooms. 1st floor empty. She took the stairs 3 at a time, her lungs burning. The 2nd floor had a balcony overlooking the village square, perfect. Maya dropped to a knee, brought up her rifle, and began to work. A Taliban fighter appeared in a window across the square, lining up a shot on the compound below. Maya's rifle cracked once. He dropped. Two more fighters in an alleyway trying to flank the American position. She acquired the first target, controlled breathing squeeze, down. The second fighter saw his companion fall and turned to locate the shooter. Fatal mistake. Maya fired twice. He crumpled. Reyes has overwatch, she called into her radio, suppressing enemy positions. For the next hour, Maya became the angel of death. Her rifle was an extension of her will, each shot purposeful and precise. A fighter with an RPG on a rooftop, down before he could fire. A machine gun team trying to reposition, both eliminated. A group of 3 attempting to rush the compound from the south, all 3 dropped in quick succession. The Marines had their saying, one shot, one kill. Maya was living it. Her rifle grew hot in her hands, empty magazines piled at her feet. Her shoulder ached from the recoil, but she didn't stop. Every enemy she eliminated was one less gun firing at her brothers and sisters below. Every trigger pull was a life potentially saved. The Taliban had expected easy targets, Americans caught in the open, disorganized, quickly overwhelmed. Instead, they found themselves hunted by a precision shooter who seemed to anticipate their every move. They began to falter, their coordinated attack becoming scattered and defensive. When the Apache finally arrived, their 30 cannons shredding enemy positions, the Taliban broke and ran. Those who didn't retreat fast enough were cut down by the helicopter gunships or Maya's rifle. As the last echoes of gunfire faded and an eerie silence settled over Jarry, Maya finally lowered her weapon. Her hands were steady, but she was trembling inside. She looked down at the pile of spent brass casings around her feet, too many to count easily. Reeves' status, Holloway's voice on the radio. Position secure, she replied, her voice hoarse. I'm coming down. When she emerged from the building, the squad was gathering casualty reports. 2 wounded, Martinez with his leg injury and a private who'd taken shrapnel from the initial RPG. No killed in action. Against all odds, everyone was alive. Santos was working on Martinez when Maya approached. He looked up at her with something like awe. They're saying you held off the entire eastern and northern sectors from that balcony. How many? Maya didn't know. In the chaos of combat, she'd stopped counting, operating on pure instinct and training. However many it took. Captain Holloway found her as she was reloading her empty magazines. His face was covered in dust and sweat, but his eyes held a new kind of respect, not the grudging acknowledgement after Sangin, but something deeper. The air support pilot counted 8 confirmed bodies in positions you were engaging, he said quietly. 8 confirmed kills in 1 engagement, Reeves. That's exceptional marksmanship under extreme pressure. Just doing my job, sir. No, Holloway shook his head. That was beyond the job, that was saving this entire unit. He paused, then added, I was wrong about you, completely wrong. I'm sorry it took this long to see it. Maya nodded, accepting the apology because she knew how hard it was for a man like Holloway to admit error. Thank you, sir. As the convoy formed up for extraction, -1 vehicle destroyed by an RPG, Maya climbed into her Humvee. Jensen handed her a bottle of water without a word. She drank deeply, her hands finally beginning to shake as the adrenaline wore off. Across from her, Martinez, his leg bandaged and elevated, caught her eye. You saved my life back there, dragged me to cover while bullets were flying. Then you saved all our lives from that balcony. I won't forget that. Neither will I, Jensen added quietly. The convoy rolled out of Jarry as the sun began to set, painting the Afghan sky in shades of orange and red. Behind them, the village returned to silence, the elders scattered, the coalition's governance initiative in shambles, but 20 American soldiers heading home alive who might not have been. Maya closed her eyes, but all she could see were the faces in her scope, the men she'd killed. 14 now. 14 souls weighing on her conscience. She wondered if there would ever come a time when that weight felt lighter. Probably not. But if the price of carrying that weight was her brothers and sisters making it home, she'd bear it. Again and again and again. That's what it meant to be a soldier. That night back at FOB Havoc, word of the ambush spread quickly. Soldiers who'd remained skeptical couldn't argue with results. 8 confirmed kills, 0 American deaths. The mathematics of survival were simple and brutal. Even Braddock's faction seemed quieter, their criticism muted by the undeniable facts. But Maya knew this wouldn't end the resistance. If anything, her success might harden the opposition from those who desperately needed her to fail to validate their worldview. She fell asleep that night with her rifle within arm's reach, as always. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, everyone in Alpha Company was alive. And that was enough. Maya woke at 3:17 hours, her t-shirt soaked with sweat, her heart hammering against her ribs. The dream was always the same. The young fighter in the alleyway during the Jarry ambush, the one who couldn't have been older than 18. In the dream, his eyes met hers through her scope, and she saw the exact moment he realized he was about to die. Then the trigger pull, the recoil, the way his body jerked and fell. Except in the dream, he didn't die immediately. He crawled toward her, bleeding, reaching out with one hand, asking why in Pashto, asking why she'd killed him. She sat up on her cot, breathing hard, and checked her watch. 3:18. No point trying to sleep again. The dream would just return. It always did. Maya pulled on her boots and stepped outside into the cool desert night. The stars above FOB Havoc were spectacular, unspoiled by light pollution, a reminder that the universe was vast and indifferent to the small violences humans inflicted on each other. She found it oddly comforting. She wasn't alone. Santos sat on a concrete barrier near the barracks, smoking a cigarette, a habit she'd never seen him indulge during the day. "Can't sleep either?" he asked quietly as she approached. "Dreams," Maya replied, sitting beside him. She didn't elaborate, she didn't need to. Santos took a long drag, the ember glowing orange in the darkness. "The kid in the alley." Maya's head snapped toward him. "How did you?" "I saw him too, after you dropped him. I was moving wounded and passed right by his body." Santos exhaled smoke slowly. 17, maybe 18 years old, had a picture in his pocket, him with his family, mother and 2 little sisters. "I shouldn't have looked, but I did." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. A family, sisters who would never see their brother again, a mother who would grieve. She tried not to think about the people behind the targets, tried to maintain the clinical distance that let soldiers do what needed to be done. But Santos had just stripped that distance away. "He was trying to kill us," Maya said, but her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "I know, you did the right thing. If you hadn't taken that shot, he might have killed Martinez or me or any of the others." Santos stubbed out his cigarette. "But that doesn't make it easy to carry, doesn't make the faces go away." They sat in silence for a long moment, 2 soldiers sharing a weight that civilians could never truly understand. The moral complexity of taking a life, even in legitimate self-defense, even in war. The knowledge that righteous and traumatic weren't mutually exclusive. "Does it get easier?" Maya finally asked. "The weight of it?" Santos shook his head slowly. "No, you just get stronger at carrying it. And you remember why you did it, to protect the person next to you. That's what makes it bearable. Not easy, but bearable." Maya nodded, grateful for his honesty. So many soldiers lied about this, pretended the killing didn't affect them, wore their body counts like badges of honor. Santos's vulnerability was a gift. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for sitting with me, for understanding." "Anytime, Rays. That's what we do, we carry it together." They sat under the stars until 400, when the base began to stir with the first hints of morning activity. Maya returned to her quarters feeling not better exactly, but less alone. The weight was still there. 14 lives taken, 14 souls on her conscience, but Santos had reminded her that she didn't have to carry it in isolation. The next few days brought a routine that felt almost normal. Patrols, maintenance, training exercises. Maya threw herself into work, staying busy to keep the dreams at bay. Most of the unit had accepted her now. Jensen regularly invited her to poker games. Martinez asked her advice on Arabic translations. Even the younger privates sought her input on marksmanship techniques. But Braddock's faction remained a dark cloud on the horizon. It came to a head on a Thursday afternoon in the motor pool. Maya was helping Jensen replace a fuel filter when Braddock appeared with two of his loyalists, Corporal Diaz and Private Kowalski, both longtime infantry soldiers who'd made their contempt for her integration clear from day one. Braddock positioned himself deliberately in her workspace, arms crossed. "Reeves, word is you've been having nightmares, waking up screaming. Sounds like someone can't handle the stress of combat." Maya straightened slowly, meeting his gaze. "I sleep fine, Braddock, but thanks for your concern." "See, that's the problem with letting women into combat roles," Braddock continued, his voice loud enough to carry to the other soldiers in the motor pool. "Physical strength isn't the only issue. It's the psychological burden. Women aren't wired for the violence, for the killing. They break down, become liabilities." Jensen started to stand to defend her, but Maya put a hand on his shoulder. This was her fight. "You want to talk about psychological burdens?" Maya's voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. "Let's talk about the fact that I have 14 confirmed kills and I'm still functional, still operational, still doing my job. You want to question my mental state? Fine. Let's go see the battalion psychologist together, get evaluated side by side. See who's really carrying their weight and who's using prejudice to mask their own insecurities." Braddock's face reddened. "You think you've proved something because you got lucky in a few firefights. You're just a diversity checkbox, an experiment that's gonna fail eventually. And when you do, when you freeze up or break down and get someone killed, everyone will remember I was right." Maya stepped closer, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. "I'm not an experiment. I'm not a checkbox. I'm a United States Army Staff Sergeant who has saved lives in this unit, including probably yours when I eliminated that machine gun nest in Sangin. Every doubt you've had about me, I've answered with performance. Every challenge I've met. Every mission I've executed." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You know what I think, Braddock. I think you're terrified. Not of me failing, of me succeeding. Because if a woman can do this job as well as or better than you, then what does that say about you? What's your excuse for mediocrity?" Braddock's jaw clenched. "Mediocrity? I've got 15 years. And I've got more confirmed kills in 6 weeks than you've had in your last 2 deployments combined." Maya cut him off. "So either acknowledge that I've earned my place here, or take your grievances to Captain Holloway and let him explain to you why performance matters more than your bruised ego." The motor pool had gone completely silent. A dozen soldiers watched the confrontation, waiting to see how Braddock would respond. For a long moment he stood there, rage and humiliation warring on his face. Then he made his choice. "This isn't over, Reeves. Sooner or later your luck runs out. And when it does, I'll make sure everyone knows this whole integration experiment was a mistake from the start." He turned and stalked away, Diaz and Kowalski following like loyal dogs. Maya's hands were shaking, not from fear but from suppressed adrenaline. She'd drawn a line, made an enemy, and there was no going back now. Jensen whistled low. "Well, you just poked the bear." "The bear needed poking," Maya replied. "I'm tired of letting his prejudice go unchallenged." Martinez approached from where he'd been watching. "For what it's worth, half the unit thinks you just said what needed saying. Braddock's been using his time in service to bully people for years. It's about time someone called him on his bullshit." But Maya knew the confrontation had consequences. Braddock wasn't going to let this go. He'd be watching, waiting for her to make a mistake, any mistake, that he could leverage against her. That night the nightmares came harder. The 18-year-old in the alley was joined by the others, the machine gunner from Sangan, the fighters from the raid, all the faces that would haunt her forever. She woke at 2:45, gasping, and stumbled outside. Santos was already there, 2 cups of coffee waiting. He handed her one without comment. "Bad night?" he asked. "They're all bad nights now," Maya admitted. "I keep seeing their faces, keep wondering if they had families, what their stories were before I ended them." Santos sipped his coffee. "That means you're human, Reyes. The day you stop feeling that weight is the day you should worry. The fact that you carry it, that it affects you, that's what separates soldiers from murderers. Doesn't make it easier." "No, but it makes it honorable. You're taking lives to save lives. That's the terrible calculus of war, and it costs us pieces of ourselves every time. But we pay that cost so others don't have to." Maya looked at him, this young medic who'd seen more death and trauma than most people could imagine. "How do you do it, Santos? How do you keep going?" He smiled sadly. "I remember my daughter. I remember that every life I save, every soldier I patch up and send home, is somebody's son or daughter going back to their family. That's what makes it bearable, knowing that the pain we carry here means less pain for families back home." They sat in companionable silence until dawn broke over the Hindu Kush mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Another day in Afghanistan, another day of carrying the weight. As Maya returned to her quarters to prepare for the morning patrol briefing, she realized something important. She wasn't carrying this weight alone anymore. Santos understood. Jensen understood. Even Holloway, in his own way, understood. The nightmares wouldn't stop. The faces wouldn't fade. But she had brothers now, people who shared the burden, who wouldn't let her collapse under it. That would have to be enough. Because the war wasn't over, and before it ended, she knew the weight would grow heavier still. The intelligence briefing came down from battalion on a cold morning in late October. A high-value target, Commander Khalid Mansur, a Taliban leader responsible for coordinating attacks across 3 provinces, had been located in a mountain compound near the Pakistani border. The compound was remote, heavily defended, and tactically challenging. It would require a precision night operation, with minimal margin for error. Colonel Webb himself delivered the briefing via secure video feed, his weathered face filling the screen in the operations center. "This is a joint op with special operations, but they're stretched thin. Alpha Company has been selected to execute based on your recent performance record. Captain Holloway, you'll have operational command on the ground." Maya sat in the back of the briefing room studying the aerial reconnaissance photos. The compound clung to a mountainside at 8,000 feet elevation, accessible only by a narrow goat path or helicopter insertion. 2 buildings, high stone walls, and an estimated 6 to 8 enemy combatants. The terrain was brutal, rocky, steep, with limited cover and concealment. "Insertion will be via 2 MH-60 Black Hawks at 200 hours, Holloway explained, pointing to the map. "Primary LZ is here, 500 meters northeast of the target. We move in on foot, breach simultaneously from 3 points, neutralize all hostiles, capture or kill Mansur, and extract with any intelligence materials. Time on target, 30 minutes maximum." He paused, his eyes scanning the assembled soldiers. "This is the real deal, people. High risk, high value. I'm selecting 12 personnel for this mission." He began calling names, the best of Alpha Company. Veterans like Braddock, skilled operators like Jensen and Martinez, Santos as the medic. "And Reeves," Holloway added, looking directly at her, "you're on the assault team." Maya felt every eye in the room turn toward her. This wasn't security detail or convoy duty. This was a direct action raid against a fortified position. Holloway was putting her at the tip of the spear, treating her like any other elite soldier. Braddock's face darkened, but he said nothing. The performance metrics spoke for themselves. Maya had earned this slot through blood and competence. At 1:30 hours, the 12-soldier assault team geared up in the helicopter hangar. Maya checked her equipment with ritualistic precision. M4 carbine with holographic sight, 6 magazines, fragmentation grenades, flex cuffs for prisoners, night vision goggles, medical kit, water. Every piece of gear had a purpose, every ounce of weight justified. Santos approached as she was checking her radio. "First helicopter assault?" he asked. "Second," Maya replied. "First was a training exercise in Germany. This is significantly more real." Santos smiled grimly. "Just remember, when the door opens, don't think. Your training will take over. Stay with your team, trust your instincts, and keep moving forward." "Hey, Santos," Maya said as he turned to leave. "If something happens to me—" "Nothing's going to happen," he cut her off firmly. "We all go in together, we all come out together. That's the deal." At 200 hours, the Black Hawks lifted off into the darkness, their rotors beating a rhythm that Maya felt in her chest. She sat between Jensen and Martinez, the cargo bay filled with grim-faced soldiers mentally preparing for violence. The helicopter climbed into the mountains, the pilots navigating by night vision through terrain that had killed better pilots in easier conditions. Then the world exploded. The RPG came from nowhere, streaking up from a concealed position and impacting the tail rotor of Maya's helicopter. The Black Hawk shuddered violently, alarm screaming, the pilot fighting for control. "We're hit, we're going down." The pilot's voice cracked with strain as he struggled with the controls, trying to convert the spin into something survivable. The helicopter plummeted, the soldiers inside thrown against their harnesses. Maya's stomach lurched as they dropped through the darkness. She could see the ground rushing up through the open door, rocks and scrub brush illuminated by the dying aircraft's lights. The impact was catastrophic. The Black Hawk hit hard, skidding sideways across the rocky terrain, metal shrieking, debris flying. Maya's head snapped forward against her helmet, stars exploding in her vision. Then stillness, broken only by the groaning of twisted metal and the ringing in her ears. "Everybody out, now," Jensen's voice cut through the fog. Maya unbuckled with shaking hands and tumbled out of the wrecked aircraft. She hit the ground hard, tasted blood, but she was alive. Around her, soldiers were emerging from the wreckage, some limping, some helping wounded comrades. The pilots were dead, killed on impact. One soldier, Private Chen, had a compound fracture in his leg, but the rest were operational, bruised and battered but capable of fighting. "Status report," Holloway barked, materializing from the darkness. Blood ran down his face from a gash above his eye, but his voice was steady. 7 operational, 2 wounded, 2 KIA, Jensen reported grimly. Holloway checked his GPS and cursed. "We're 2 kilometers from the target, and the second bird had to abort when we took fire. No extraction until we complete the mission or reach the secondary LZ at dawn. We're on our own." Maya assessed their situation with cold clarity. Stranded in Taliban territory, 2 kilometers from a hardened target, outnumbered and without air support. The mission should be aborted. They should find cover and wait for extraction. But Mansour was in that compound. If they didn't take him tonight, he'd disappear back into Pakistan, and the intelligence opportunity would be lost. More attacks would follow. More soldiers would die. "We can still do this," Maya said quietly. The others looked at her. "The compound doesn't know we crashed. They're expecting helicopter noise, confusion. We use that. We approach on foot, use the terrain, hit them before they realize we're coming from a different vector." Braddock scoffed. "That's insane. We're compromised, down 4 personnel, and you want to assault a fortified position." "I want to complete the mission," Maya replied. "Isn't that why we're here?" Holloway studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Reeves is right. We didn't come this far to quit. Martinez, Jensen, get Chen stabilized and concealed. He stays here with the pilots until extraction. The rest of us move on the compound. We've got 2 hours until dawn. Let's make them count." They moved through the mountains in near-total darkness, Maya on point using her land navigation skills honed during Ranger School. The GPS units had been damaged in the crash, leaving them with compass, map, and terrain association. Most soldiers struggled with old-school navigation, but Maya had excelled at it, understanding that technology always failed at the worst possible moment. She led them through a narrow ravine, across a frozen stream, up a goat path that threatened to crumble under their boots. Every step was calculated, every pause deliberate. Behind her, the team moved in disciplined silence, trusting her judgment even though some of them had doubted her weeks earlier. At 4:30 hours, they reached the ridgeline overlooking the compound. Below them, warm lights glowed in the windows. Guards walked the perimeter, but they were relaxed, unsuspecting. The helicopter attack had failed, and they assumed the Americans had retreated. Fatal assumption. Holloway gathered the team. Modified assault plan. Reeves, Jensen, you take the south building. Martinez, Braddock, north building. I'll lead the breach on the main entrance. Manser is likely in the largest room, second floor of the north building. We go in fast, we go in hard, and we don't stop until every threat is neutralized. They moved into position silently, shadows among shadows. Maya's heart rate was elevated but controlled. This was it, the culmination of every hour of training, every moment of doubt overcome, every kill that had brought her to this mountain in the middle of nowhere. At 4:45, Holloway gave the signal. The assault began. Maya breached the south building door with a well-placed kick, her rifle up and ready. The first room was a communal sleeping area, 4 fighters scrambling for weapons. She engaged without hesitation, muscle memory and training fused into lethal efficiency. 2 rounds sent her mass on the first target. He dropped. Transition to the second target. 3 rounds, down. Jensen was beside her, engaging the third fighter who'd managed to grab an AK-47. The man's weapon clattered to the floor as he fell. The fourth fighter, younger and faster, made it to his rifle and swung it toward Maya. She was faster, 2 shots, both hits. He collapsed against the wall, leaving a smear of blood as he slid down. "Clear," Maya called, moving deeper into the building. Gunfire echoed from the north building where Holloway's team had made contact. The compound had erupted into chaos. Maya and Jensen moved upstairs, clearing rooms systematically. Every corner could hide death. Every doorway was a fatal funnel. But they moved with practiced precision, covering each other's sectors, communicating with hand signals and terse commands. In the final room of the south building, they found what they'd come for, a makeshift operations center. Maps covered the walls showing coalition bases and patrol routes. A laptop sat on a crude desk, still powered on. Documents in Pashto detailed future attack plans. "Jackpot," Jensen breathed. "Bag everything. This is intelligence gold." As Maya began photographing documents, an explosion rocked the compound, a grenade from the north building. The firefight was intensifying. "Contact, multiple hostiles, second floor." That was Martinez's voice on the radio, strained and urgent. "Moving to support," Maya responded. She and Jensen abandoned the intelligence gathering and sprinted across the compound courtyard toward the north building. Bullets cracked overhead, a fighter on the roof engaging them. Maya dropped to one knee, acquired the target, fired. The shooter tumbled from the rooftop. They burst into the north building to find Martinez pinned down at the base of the stairs, returning fire at hostiles above. Braddock was providing covering fire from a defensive position, his face grim. "Manser is up there," Martinez shouted over the gunfire, barricaded with at least 2 bodyguards. Maya assessed the tactical problem. A frontal assault up the stairs would be suicide, too narrow, too exposed. But there had to be another way. She spotted a window on the exterior wall. "Cover me," she ordered, then sprinted to the window and looked up. An exterior ledge, narrow but passable, ran along the second floor, risky but possible. Without waiting for approval, Maya holstered her rifle, grabbed the window frame and pulled herself up. The ledge was barely 6 inches wide, and the drop was 20 feet onto rocks. One slip meant broken bones at minimum. She pressed herself against the wall and moved laterally, her fingers finding purchase in the ancient stone. Below, she could hear Jensen shouting something, but she blocked it out. Focus. One step, then another. Don't look down. She reached a second-floor window and risked a glance inside. Manser and 2 fighters, barricaded behind furniture, firing down the stairwell at her team. They had no idea she was behind them. Maya pulled a flashbang grenade from her vest, popped the pin, and smashed the window with her rifle butt. She tossed the grenade inside and turned away, closing her eyes. The explosion was deafening even through the walls. She spun back, raised her rifle, and fired through the window at the disoriented fighters. One dropped immediately. The second managed to turn toward her, but Jensen had rushed up the stairs during the confusion and engaged him from the doorway. That left Manser. The Taliban commander, older but still dangerous, grabbed for a pistol on the floor. Maya's shot was faster, striking his shoulder and spinning him away from the weapon. "Don't move," she screamed in Pashto, her rifle trained on his center mass. Manser slumped against the wall, clutching his wounded shoulder, his eyes filled with pain and hatred. But he was alive, captured. Mission complete. The compound fell silent except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Holloway appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, blood soaking through his sleeve from a wound Maya hadn't noticed before. "Status," he demanded. "South building secure, intelligence secured, Manser captured," Maya reported, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "4 enemy KIA in my sectors." Holloway nodded, something like pride flickering across his face. "Outstanding work, all of you. Now let's get the hell out of here before reinforcements arrive." They secured Manser with flex cuffs, gathered all the intelligence materials they could carry, and moved to the extraction point as the first hints of dawn painted the eastern sky. The operation had taken 42 minutes from breach to extraction, 12 minutes over the planned timeline, but successful nonetheless. As the rescue helicopter lifted them out of the mountains, Maya sat across from a sullen, wounded Manser. His eyes met hers and she saw recognition there, not of her personally, but of what she represented. An American soldier, a woman, a warrior who'd infiltrated his compound and dismantled his operation with precision and violence. She didn't gloat, didn't need to. The mission spoke for itself. Beside her, even Braddock was silent, unable to dispute what had just happened. Maya's performance had been flawless, navigation that saved the mission, combat action that eliminated 4 enemy combatants, and tactical improvisation that led to Manser's capture. As FOB Havoc appeared on the horizon, Santos caught her eye and nodded with quiet respect. Maya closed her eyes, exhaustion finally catching up with her. 14 confirmed kills had just become 18. The weight grew heavier. But the mission was a success. Manser was captured, her team was alive. And Maya Reeves had proven, once again, that she belonged on any battlefield she chose. The news of the Manser capture spread through the battalion like wildfire. By the time Maya's team returned to FOB Havoc, exhausted and blood-stained, the entire base knew what had happened. A crashed helicopter, a 2-kilometer night march through hostile mountains, a successful assault against a fortified compound, and a high-value target in custody. It was the kind of operation that would be studied in military academies for years to come. But Maya didn't feel triumphant. She felt hollowed out, running on fumes and adrenaline crash. 4 more faces added to her nightmares, 4 more souls weighing on her conscience. She went through the mandatory debrief in a fog, answered questions mechanically, then stumbled to her quarters and collapsed on her cot still wearing her gear. She woke 6 hours later to Santos gently shaking her shoulder. "Reeves, you need to get up. Battalion formation in 30 minutes. Colonel's orders, everyone attends, no exceptions." Maya groaned and sat up, every muscle in her body screaming in protest. The crash had left her covered in bruises, and the mountain climb had shredded her legs. But orders were orders. She cleaned up as best she could, changed into a fresh uniform, and made her way to the parade ground. The entire company was assembling, nearly 200 soldiers forming up in ranks. Maya took her position with Alpha Company's 2nd Platoon, standing beside Jensen and Martinez. The mood was strange, expectant. Soldiers whispered among themselves, speculating about why the colonel had called a full formation. "Think it's about the Mansour op," Jensen muttered. "Maybe commendations," Martinez suggested. "That was a hell of a mission." Maya said nothing. She just wanted this to be over so she could sleep for another 12 hours. Colonel Marcus Webb arrived in a convoy of vehicles, his presence immediately commanding attention. He was a legend in the infantry, 3 decades of service, multiple combat deployments, a chest full of valor awards, and a reputation for being absolutely uncompromising about standards and performance. He didn't suffer fools, didn't engage in politics, and didn't care about anything except mission accomplishment and taking care of soldiers. "Company, attention!" Captain Holloway's voice rang out across the parade ground. 200 soldiers snapped to attention in unison, the sound of boots hitting gravel echoing off the HESCO barriers. Colonel Webb strode to the front of the formation, his expression unreadable. He carried a folder under his arm and moved with the confidence of a man who'd spent his entire adult life leading warriors into combat. "At ease," he ordered. The formation relaxed slightly, but tension remained thick in the air. Webb surveyed the assembled soldiers with the practiced eye of someone who could assess unit morale and readiness at a glance. Then he spoke, his voice carrying effortlessly across the parade ground without needing amplification. "Alpha Company has had a remarkable 60 days. Your operations in this deployment have been aggressive, successful, and professional. You've eliminated significant enemy threats, gathered critical intelligence, and represented the United States Army with distinction." He paused, letting his words sink in. Maya felt uncomfortable with the attention, wishing she could disappear into the ranks. "However," Webb continued, "I've been reviewing your after-action reports, and I've noticed something interesting, something that contradicts certain assumptions that were made when this company received a new member 6 weeks ago." Maya's stomach dropped. She knew where this was going, and she desperately didn't want to be singled out. Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves, front and center. The command hit her like a physical blow. For a split second, she considered pretending she hadn't heard, but that was impossible. Every eye in the formation was already turning toward her. She marched forward, her spine straight despite the exhaustion and bruises, and reported to the colonel. "Staff Sergeant Reeves reporting as ordered, sir." Webb looked at her with an expression that was hard to read, not hostile but not warm either. Evaluating, measuring. "Staff Sergeant, when you arrived at this FOB 6 weeks ago, there were concerns expressed by various personnel. Concerns about physical capability, psychological resilience, unit cohesion, and combat effectiveness." He said it matter-of-factly, without judgment, simply stating the reality. "Do you recall those concerns?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied quietly, her voice steady despite the humiliation of having her doubting laid bare in front of the entire company. "I want to address those concerns publicly," Webb said, opening the folder he carried. "Because I've reviewed every after-action report from your platoon's engagements over the past 6 weeks, every patrol, every firefight, every operation. And I think it's important that everyone here understands exactly what you've accomplished." He began to read, his voice clear and clinical, like he was reciting a shopping list rather than a catalog of violence. Sangin Valley Convoy Ambush, October 2nd. 3 enemy combatants eliminated by Staff Sergeant Reeves, including the PKM machine gunner, whose position was suppressing the entire convoy. Her actions created the tactical opening that allowed the unit to maneuver and counterattack. Braddock's face, visible in her peripheral vision, had gone pale. Webb continued. Village Raid, October 8th. 2 enemy combatants eliminated during building clearance. Intelligence materials translated from Pashto, preventing a planned attack on FOB Lexington that would have resulted in significant coalition casualties. Maya stood frozen, wishing the ground would swallow her. This was worse than any firefight, being held up as an example, her kills enumerated like trophies. Jarry Village Ambush, October 15th. Webb's voice grew harder. 8 confirmed enemy combatants eliminated from an overwatch position under sustained fire. Staff Sergeant Reeves single-handedly suppressed the northern and eastern sectors, preventing the unit from being overrun. 0 friendly KIA, 2 wounded. The air support pilot's report specifically credits her precision fire with saving multiple lives. The parade ground was absolutely silent. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, feel 200 pairs of eyes boring into her back. Mountain Compound Operation, October 23rd. 4 enemy combatants eliminated during building clearance and assault. High-value target captured alive. Staff Sergeant Reeves provided crucial land navigation after GPS failure, led tactical improvisation that enabled Mansur's capture, and demonstrated exceptional combat performance under extreme conditions. Webb closed the folder and looked directly at Maya, then turned to address the entire formation. The mathematics are simple. In 6 weeks of deployment, Staff Sergeant Reeves has 18 confirmed enemy kills. That's the highest confirmed kill count in this company. It's the highest in this battalion. Some of you, his eyes swept across the formation, and Braddock visibly flinched, expressed concerns about whether she could survive combat. Webb's voice took on an edge of steel. The enemy found out the hard way that she doesn't just survive, she excels, she dominates, she wins. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a medal, the Army Commendation Medal with V device for valor. Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves, for exceptional valor in combat, superior marksmanship under fire, and repeatedly saving the lives of fellow soldiers through decisive action in the face of the enemy, I'm proud to present you with this commendation. Webb pinned the medal to her chest, then stepped back and rendered a crisp salute, not the perfunctory salute of rank, but the genuine salute of one warrior honoring another. Maya returned the salute, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. Webb turned back to the formation, his voice now addressing the entire company. I don't care about politics. I don't care about social experiments or diversity initiatives or any of that. I care about one thing, winning. I care about soldiers who can fight, who can lead, and who can accomplish the mission under any conditions. His gaze swept across the assembled soldiers, lingering on certain faces, Braddock's among them. This soldier is a warrior. She has proven it beyond any shadow of doubt. She has earned your respect through blood, sweat, and exceptional performance. And I expect, no, I demand that you treat her accordingly. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then, from somewhere in the formation, a single soldier began to clap. Then another. Then a dozen, then 50, then the entire company erupted in applause. Maya stood at attention, the medal heavy on her chest, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks despite her best efforts. This was what she'd fought for, not the medal, not the recognition, but the simple acknowledgement that she belonged. That she'd earned her place not through politics or quotas, but through the most fundamental military currency, performance under fire. Webb leaned in close, his voice quiet enough that only she could hear. You've made me proud, Staff Sergeant. You've made the Army proud. Don't let anyone ever tell you different. Thank you, sir, Maya managed, her voice thick with emotion. Dismissed, Holloway ordered, and the formation broke. Immediately, soldiers surrounded Maya. Jensen gripped her shoulder, grinning. Martinez offered a fist bump. Santos pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. Even soldiers who'd been neutral before, who'd watched and waited to see which way the wind would blow, now approached with congratulations and respect. The tide had turned, publicly, officially, irrevocably. But not everyone was celebrating. Through the crowd, Maya caught sight of Braddock standing alone, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and she saw something dangerous there. The colonel's public rebuke had destroyed whatever credibility Braddock had used to undermine her, but it had also created an enemy who now had nothing to lose. Santos noticed her expression and followed her gaze. "Don't worry about him," he said quietly. "His power came from doubt. The colonel just killed that doubt in front of everyone. Braddock's finished." Maya wanted to believe that, but she'd learned in her years fighting to belong that prejudice didn't die easily. It just went underground, waiting for an opportunity to resurface. Still, as she walked back to her quarters surrounded by soldiers who now treated her as one of their own, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She'd climbed the mountain, literally and figuratively. She'd proven every doubter wrong. She'd earned her place in the infantry through merit, courage, and 18 confirmed kills. The nightmares would still come. The weight of those 18 lives would still press down on her conscience. The war, both external and internal, was far from over. But tonight, for the first time since arriving at FOB Havoc, Maya Reeves felt like she truly belonged. And that was worth every sacrifice she'd made to get here. The applause finally faded, but the shift it represented was permanent. Maya walked back toward her quarters in a daze, soldiers parting to let her through, offering nods and words of congratulation. The medal felt heavy on her chest, not physically, but symbolically. It represented validation, recognition, acceptance bought with blood and courage. Jensen caught up with her near the barracks. "Hey, some of us are getting together tonight. Poker game, terrible coffee, even worse jokes. You should come." It was such a simple invitation, the kind extended to any soldier, but Maya understood its significance. This wasn't charity or political correctness. This was genuine inclusion, the kind that couldn't be mandated or faked. "Yeah," she said, managing a smile despite her exhaustion. "I'll be there." As Jensen walked away, Maya entered her quarters, the small, isolated plywood structure that had been her home for 6 weeks. She sat on her cot and finally allowed herself to process what had just happened. Colonel Webb hadn't just given her a medal. He'd given her something more valuable: legitimacy. He'd taken every whispered doubt, every dismissive comment, every assumption about her capabilities, and he destroyed them with cold, hard facts. 18 confirmed kills, the highest in the company, the highest in the battalion. The numbers felt surreal. She'd never wanted to be defined by a body count, never sought to rack up kills like some video game score. Each of those 18 had been a human being, sons, brothers, fathers, husbands. Each one weighed on her soul. But in the brutal calculus of infantry combat, those kills had also saved lives. American lives. Her brothers and sisters in arms. That night's poker game was held in a corner of the rec tent. 5 soldiers crowded around a folding table with battered playing cards and a pile of MRE components serving as chips. Maya arrived to find Jensen, Martinez, Santos, and 2 others, Corporal Davis and Specialist Kim, both solid infantrymen she'd worked with on patrols. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence," Martinez announced with exaggerated fanfare. "The deadliest soldier in Alpha Company." "Shut up," Maya said, but she was smiling as she pulled up a chair. "Deal me in." For 2 hours they played cards, told terrible jokes, and traded stories from previous deployments. No one treated Maya differently. No kid gloves, no special consideration. They gave her shit when she made a bad play, celebrated when she won a hand, and included her in the easy camaraderie that defined infantry culture. It was perfect. Around 2200 hours, Captain Holloway appeared at the tent entrance. "Reeves, got a minute?" Maya followed him outside, wondering if she was in trouble. But Holloway's expression wasn't stern. It was thoughtful, almost hesitant. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "When you first arrived, I wrote you off. Saw you as a political liability, an experiment that would fail and create problems for my unit. I was wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong." Maya didn't know what to say. Officers rarely apologize to enlisted personnel, especially not captains to staff sergeants. "You're not just a competent soldier," Holloway continued. "You're exceptional. Your performance has been exemplary, and more than that, you've handled the prejudice and resistance with more grace than most people could manage. I judged you before you had a chance to prove yourself, and I'm sorry for that." "Thank you, sir," Maya said quietly. "That means a lot." Holloway nodded. "For what it's worth, you've changed minds in this unit. Not everyone's. Some people are too stubborn or too invested in their beliefs to change. But you've proven that gender is irrelevant in combat. What matters is skill, courage, and commitment. You have all three in abundance." After he left, Maya stood in the cool night air, processing another unexpected moment of validation. She'd spent so much energy preparing for resistance that acceptance felt almost foreign. The next few days brought a new normal. Maya was included in planning sessions without question, her tactical input valued and implemented. Younger soldiers sought her advice on marksmanship and land navigation. Even the mess hall dynamics shifted, her table filled with soldiers eager to sit with her rather than emptying when she approached. But not everyone accepted the new reality. 4 days after Colonel Webb's formation, Maya was conducting weapons maintenance in the armory when Braddock appeared. He looked haggard, diminished somehow. The public humiliation had clearly taken its toll. "You must feel pretty good about yourself," he said, his voice bitter. "Got the colonel singing your praises, the whole company kissing your ass." Maya continued cleaning her rifle, not looking up. "I feel tired, Braddock. Tired of fighting to prove myself. Tired of carrying 18 dead men in my head. Tired of people like you who care more about my gender than my performance." "You think this changes anything?" Braddock's voice rose. "You think one deployment, one set of good numbers, proves that women belong in infantry?" Maya finally looked up, meeting his eyes with calm directness. "I don't need to prove anything anymore. The colonel did that for me. 18 confirmed kills. 0 friendly casualties on my watch. Multiple lives saved. Those are facts, not opinions. You can accept them or not. I don't really care anymore." "Your luck will run out eventually," Braddock said, but there was no conviction in his voice now. He was repeating old arguments that had lost their power. "Maybe," Maya acknowledged. "Everyone's luck runs out eventually in combat. But when mine does, it won't be because I'm a woman. It'll be because war is random and brutal and doesn't care about gender. Just like performance doesn't care about gender. Just like courage doesn't care about gender." She set down her cleaning rod and stood, facing Braddock fully. "I'm not here to represent all women or prove some social point. I'm here to be a soldier. I've done that job well. If you can't accept it, that's your problem, not mine. But I'm done letting your prejudice occupy space in my head." Braddock stared at her for a long moment, something like defeat in his eyes. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Santos, who'd been working in the corner and witnessed the exchange, approached. "That was well handled." "I'm just tired of the fight," Maya admitted. "I want to focus on the mission, not on proving I deserve to be here." "Then mission accomplished," Santos said with a small smile, "because you've already proven it." That evening, Maya returned to the poker game, now a regular occurrence, and found herself laughing at one of Martinez's terrible jokes. The normalcy of it struck her, sitting with fellow soldiers, being one of the team, not special or different or experimental. Just Staff Sergeant Reeves, infantry soldier. Later, lying in her bunk, Maya reflected on how far she'd come. From the unwelcome arrival 6 weeks ago to this moment of genuine belonging. The journey had cost her pieces of her innocence, her sleep, perhaps parts of her soul. 18 lives taken would haunt her forever. But she'd also gained something invaluable, proof that she belonged on any battlefield she chose. Not because of politics or quotas or social experiments, but because she could fight. Because she was good at what she did. Because in the only arena that mattered, combat, she'd excelled. The nightmare still came. That night she woke at 3:15, sweating and shaking, the young fighter's face vivid in her mind. But when she stumbled outside for air, she found Santos already there with 2 cups of coffee, as if he'd known she'd need company. They sat in comfortable silence, 2 warriors sharing a burden that civilians could never fully understand. "Does it get easier?" Maya asked, though she'd asked before and knew the answer. "No," Santos replied honestly, "but you get stronger, and you don't carry it alone." As dawn broke over FOB Havoc, painting the Afghan sky in shades of gold and pink, Maya realized that was the truth she'd been seeking all along. Not that she could do this job without cost, but that she didn't have to pay that cost alone. She had brothers now, Santos, Jensen, Martinez, Holloway, even former skeptics who'd become allies. The war would continue. More missions, more firefights, more lives taken and saved. The weight would grow heavier. But she had a tribe now, people who understood, who shared the burden, who wouldn't let her collapse under it. 3 months remained in this deployment. Maya knew there would be more combat, more challenges, more moments when her life hung in the balance. But she also knew she was ready. She'd proven herself beyond any doubt. She'd earned her place in the infantry through the only currency that mattered: blood, sweat, and performance under fire. Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves wasn't an experiment anymore. She wasn't a diversity hire or a political statement. She was simply a soldier, a damn good one, who'd answered the oldest military question with 18 confirmed kills. Can you fight? Yes, she absolutely could. And she was just getting started. As she headed to the morning briefing, Jensen fell into step beside her, ready for another day in paradise. Maya smiled, adjusting her rifle sling. Always. They walked together toward the operations center, 2 soldiers among many, equals in the only brotherhood that truly mattered, those who'd stood in the fire and refused to break. The broader battle for acceptance would continue beyond this deployment, beyond this war. Women would face resistance in combat roles for years to come, fighting the same battles Maya had fought, proving themselves again and again. But here, in Alpha Company, on this forward operating base in Helmand Province, the question had been answered definitively. Gender didn't determine a warrior. Courage did, skill did, performance under fire did. Maya Reeves had demonstrated all 3 in abundance. And that made her exactly what she'd always claimed to be: a United States Army infantry soldier, worthy of the title and all it demanded. The rest of the world would catch up eventually. For now, she had a mission to complete. The end.